Laufionga, thank you very much for this opportunity today. So let's just launch into it. I'd like to ask the first question, which is basically relating to how highly contested this election period has been. I just wanted to ask you, in your experience and also going through this period of the last few months, what do you see as the single most important issue for voters in Samoa right now?
Making a choice, I think. We have three parties. Fourth smaller one with the Labour Party, and then we also have quite a number of independents. So I think the selection or the choice, the voters, they've been asked to look at the more options, so to speak.
Okay. In terms of an actual issue itself, what do you think is sort of like a cross-cutting issue across all the parties that's really, really important for voters to consider?
Cost of living, but I think that's a fairly global issue.
Yeah.
I think with the dengue outbreak at the moment, the delivery of services for health is probably up there, and also then the impact on education also, because the schools are closed. So I think the situation with the dengue will bring those two. I mean, those are always pretty much fundamental sort of development pillars, education and health. But I think they'll be underscored because of the current situation. I think the cost of living, and I think also because we're really going through a challenging times with regards to the human resources, to undertake services, businesses. I think the labour mobility has really impacted. So I think it presents for those people who are employed here, what is being on offer through the different manifestos. But also then the businesses also, given the challenges that they face with the situation of limited human resource, they'll be looking to see, what the respective parties are presenting on that front, I think. And I think associated with the cost of living, what are the proposals being made to lighten the economic burden, the whole range from individuals through to businesses and organizations.
Okay. And in terms of Samoa Potopoto's take on, as I like that you touched on the labour mobility issue. Are there any sort of concrete policies that you are looking at for the future to sort of find that balance between here and there overseas?
Well, if we take health, right? So the numbers that the health are putting out of doctors that are required to cover the whole country is 300. The current registered doctors is close to 200. So this is just an example, right? So how do you meet those? And I think we have to develop the policies. I don't think it's sufficient to grow our own. We have a medical. I think we seriously need to look at importation of skills, to keep the country viable and working.
Okay, thank you for that one. I would like to just move on to another topic. this is probably more related towards the split from FAST. So you faced criticism that the split signals instability in leadership. How do you respond to those criticisms?
Well, it's interesting that, and and it's been brought forward by, say, the HRPP. They have very short memories. The HRPP, when it was first established, their first government in the 1982-85, that was the term that had 3 prime ministers. And then in the second term, 1985, there was a split of the HRPP on the first year, because I came in 1985.
Yeah.
And at the end of 1985, a majority, well, a fair number, crossed the floor and joined the opposition and formulated the Va'ai Tupola government. So I would, I think people need to see the context of what is happening. And it's an evolving thing. So new party, HRPP, new party, FAST, sort of settling. But in terms of the actual split of the FAST, I mean, it came down to a pretty fundamental issue, to do with upholding the rule of law, having respect for the looking after the integrity of public office. So those are pretty fundamental issues. Unfortunately, it's become, sort of personalized rather than, any substantial policy issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've always upheld, the principle of rule by the rule of law as a very fundamental foundation for any democratic government. And I think if we can't enshrine that, to the degree where it becomes automatic, right? I mean, with the case of Lauli's charges, I mean, in every other proper democracy, and it's happened here too. I mean, this isn't new to Lauli. In the administration 2016, he resigned because he had charges. So I think, just to make the point about, the rule of law and the upholding of public office, I did say to him, you resigned, when you faced charges in the 2016 administration. Why are you not doing it now? It's an automatic thing. And he said he resigned because he knew that he did not have the support of the party. So it then brings that whole issue down to politics, determining factor of whether a member upholds or does not uphold the principle of law or the maintenance and upkeep of the integrity of office. So,
okay.
I mean, I take your point. I mean, of course, as a leader, I had to make that choice. Do I keep the solidarity of the group, or do I work on the principle? And I chose to go on principle.
Okay. I guess just following on from that, do you think that you could have taken a firmer hand earlier on in your term, especially with the cabinet ministers? And also, do you think that that contributed towards what eventually happened with the collapse?
I may have, but I think my style of leadership is I like ministers to undertake, their portfolios and their work.
Yeah.
And I think also the nature of Lauli, especially, he's, he likes to do the media thing, and so I mean there was a lot of feedback about that. My way of looking at it, as long as he was talking about, his sector and his business, that was fine. I mean, there were a few glitchy issues there, around the the tourism flights and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But then once again, right, this is just bringing back the messages to the party and to the members, you know, how you conduct yourselves in the context, especially if you're holding office. You should be very careful not to be seen to be pursuing personal interests.
Yeah. Okay. I did want to ask you because just, I suppose, based on your predecessor, presence in the country, I think it's noted that you do fly in and out a lot. I wanted to ask whether you think that may have had a hand in the fact that some of the cabinet ministers eventually just kind of went off the...
I don't think I flew in and out any more than my predecessor did.
Okay, I think at some point there I did see there was, well, I mean, obviously I'm referring to news articles from here, but there were 11 cabinet ministers out of the country at one point, and there were, I think, maybe only 4 in the country. Do you think that also may have led to sort of a lack in trust in terms of leadership or just the togetherness of cabinet as a whole? I think that was obviously towards the end of the original group.
No, I mean, ministers travel, and you know, it is what it is. I think you need to see it for the context.
Yeah.
I don't think it was any more different than, I mean, I've been in cabinets since 1991. And, you know, I think circumstances also change. I mean, it's quite multi-layered, you know, the representation for overseas. You know, it's sectorial, it's regional, you know, sub-regional and international. So, you know, ministers sort of have to cover all those aspects of things.
Okay. I think I just have one more question on the fast side of things. I just wanted to ask you, at what point did you realize, just your own personal reflections, that fast was heading in a direction that you no longer aligned with? What was the moment for you?
Oh, I mean, I mean, we had a manifesto. We were working through that. But, you know, this whole issue of, you know, how holding office and the responsibilities, you know, that the office bearers take. I mean, that was, you know, a constant issue to remind, especially, you know, cabinet. But it didn't really come to the head until Lauli's charges, you know. I mean, his charges had nothing to do with his official responsibilities, although he was undertaking a role, first of all, that was the police role, you know, investigating and so forth. He had overstepped his mark in terms of, you know, there is a minister for police. I mean, and I had spoken to him, you know, why he was taking, you know, it became a sort of a cause for him. Unfortunately, well, you know, it was, you know, against the member from HRPP. So, you know, it was very political in that sense, that these two politicians in the government and in the opposition. And that was an element of the issue that I said to him he should be very careful about. That's not what he's there to do. You know, the matter should be left to the police. But, you know, so really, I mean, for any political party, I mean, you're trying to get people to be, you know, focused on a plan, and that's what the manifesto was, right? So, you know, as the cabinet, we're trying to work through that, legislative programs, looking at the operations of the respective ministries and sectors. But In terms of, keeping the program running, we were fine until, the issue with Laudi's charges came up.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. I'd like to move over to a question about Parliament. So at the moment, you have a bill before Parliament that seeks to change the way women's seats are calculated and the conditions that come with them, the Suifai Puretamaitai seats. And I wanted to ask why that's something that you want to bring about. Like, why this bill when it's already been decided by court?
Yes, because the legislation needs to be aligned. Because as the legislation lies at the moment, the 10% is 5, right? So it needs to be in the books, right? So, I mean, it was essentially, just to align the decision of the court and the actual legislation. So, I mean, if issues were to arise, the court will recognize that the court changed the 10% to 6, but it would be good if the actual legislation was amended to reflect that, because otherwise it's contradictory.
Sure. Okay. And what about the conditions in terms of the service? For instance, if it's activated, somebody comes into Parliament, but they're not aligned to a specific district, or they will, if the Whunawhāwai continues, where will their service be directed, and will they have the funds to provide service for the district? So what was the motivation behind that, or why those conditions on the Suifai Puretamaitai?
Well, not so much conditions. I think the whaipules, because supposedly the legislation, I mean, it just said that they were members of Parliament. But perhaps it needed further clarification. If they were members at large, because they come in on the 10%, or whether, for instance, in New Zealand, you have the list MPs and the constituency MPs. So the legislation hadn't, I suppose, developed sufficiently to meet those kind of details. So, there were always the questions on what the status of those members were. So I think there was that push to just have more clarity. In terms of the practice of the women who've come in through the 10%, they've essentially served as constituency members.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. I'd like to move on to the campaigning. So your campaign, SAP, for Sāmoa Putuputu has focused a lot on the rule of law, respect and cultural values. How will that translate, though, into actual policies for the everyday person that they can feel in their daily lives?
Well, I think, the rule of law can be quite straightforward because, it's in the books and it's recorded. The cultural aspects, I think in the context, in the political context, it speaks more to, I suppose, what is local governance, right? So, in other countries, larger countries, there's quite an evolved and developed local government level of government. But traditionally, with Samoa, there's always been that recognition from central government of their partnership, I suppose, with the councils. The development of the offices of Pulenu'u or Suianu'u. But it's essentially about that connection between central government and the village governance, and recognizing that village governance is based, on Samoan custom and tradition. Mind you, the Samoan Parliament too, if you look at the makeup, one of the basic eligibilities is that you have to hold a matai title.
That's right.
So to some extent, that's still a reflection of a limited suffrage, to matais. And we're beginning to sort of hear, the voices from constituencies, especially with representation, say, for women, and also taking into account age groups, youth representation and so forth. So I think coming back to your question, how would people recognize that from their daily lives? Is then how does this relationship between central government and the village councils manifest, right? And will the village councils then sort of evolve into a more how do I say this, structured, right? Because every village, they have their rules and regulations. So then, the relationship with central government and the influence that has on how village councils will conduct themselves. So how village councils conduct themselves will also then impact on the daily lives of people. And essentially, one of those basic tenets of that relationship is the rule of law and people's compliance to it.
Okay. Are you then, just picking up on you mentioning structuring, are you considering like a more streamlined approach across the board?
Well, I mean, we have the the Village Whānau Act, right, which is one piece of legislation that has addressed this relationship. But, I think as things evolve and, if we're wanting a more impactful, decentralized approach to our governance and development, then, I think, and especially, our cultural context, it's a strength, I think, the Sāmoa. And we probably need to really utilize that, to the fullest potential.
Do you think that, a move towards more decentralized governance would just cost more money, bog down?
Any governance costs money. And that's the other thing. Samoa is a small country, only, 200,000.
Yeah.
So, if you look at things like, if you're talking about cost of government and the 10%, right? So that has the potential to change the numbers in Parliament from 51 to 57, right? Yeah. So, and that's the other reason we need to change the law, because the Constitution says it can only go up to 56 because, it was at 5. But those have budgetary implications, salaries, et cetera, et cetera. But then that is the balance, I think, for any government, the cost of governance, for the proper conduct of how the country is run.
Okay, thank you for that. I just wanted to touch on, I know there's been a lot of talk and whispers about possible coalitions and this and that. So I wanted to ask that if no party wins a clear majority, do you think we're ready for another coalition government? And also, who would you realistically be able to work with?
Just to correct you, we didn't have another coalition government. We were a minority government.
Okay. I was sorry, I was referring back to the
85.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether that was a coalition. Well, I suppose in a way it was, because there were two that joined. There is that possibility, not only between parties, but we have many independents running. So that's another factor. But for independents, there is a provision that prior to swearing in, they can make a choice
Yes.
to become a member of a political party.
Is this something you'll be pursuing, trying to court the independence?
If we have to. I mean, we've been in discussions with singular independence, and you might also be aware that there's a grouping of a coalition of independents. So yes.
Okay. And what about the other two major parties? Either of them you'd be willing to work with?
Well, I mean, the situation when it arises, the results, you know, there are all those options to consider.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm glad you actually already mentioned about the independents, because I was going to ask what you think about them. I just want to move on to probably a more social issue. So basically on the meth epidemic, which the police commissioner has referred to it as an epidemic, what's your plan to disrupt supply, support rehabilitation, and protect our communities from the ravages of the addiction to meth?
Well, you know, border control is pretty key to the influx of drugs. So we've been doing quite a lot of work on that, not only nationally, but I think regionally we've just, you know, had this maritime police meeting here in Samoa. So, you know, border control is one of those things. I think also building the capacities for the lead agencies, customs, police, justice. So I think it's a multiple sector approach that needs to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you be looking at getting some assistance from some of our I mean, I don't know, would we refer to China as non-traditional now? But, you know, generally it's like Australia or New Zealand who helps with capacity building or training. Would this be something that you'd be willing to partner with other external partners?
I don't know if you know this, but there's a huge training part of China's assistance from Samoa. You know, not only for scholarships, but also for different sectors, and that has been ongoing for quite a long time.
Yes.
So I would call that a traditional partner.
I think maybe more specifically the security side I was referring to. Yeah.
Well, I think it's easier to work with New Zealand and Australia and the regional because, you know, of the geographical placing. It makes more sense. I mean, it's our common area, so to speak. So, you know, in terms of security, then that would be the first layer, you know, of protection that we would naturally move to and are doing.
Okay. And on the ground here, just in communities, what is the government currently doing to sort of answer? Because I think everybody is quite aware of the problem of meth out there in our communities.
Well, really, it's to work through the different agencies. That's what government does. You know, the policing to find out the customs for border, the justice system, you know, to review and especially their capacities to build, you know, in terms of legal processes. The health sector, you know, in terms of rehabilitation.
Yes. Do we have a rehab center here for?
Not really.
No.
I mean, it would be seen, you know, more as a you know, a medical response, but it probably does need to move towards. I mean, just like any significant build-up, you know, they will probably need to build capacities around that.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to jump onto our regional space here. So obviously, as the Pacific becomes more of a growing competition, we all know, how should Samoa balance our traditional allies, New Zealand, Australia, USA, with the Chinese influence in the Pacific, in your view, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and obviously as our Prime Minister?
Well, I mean, it's not as though China's just happened now. We're actually celebrating 50 years this year.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not so much new. It's just, I suppose, the geopolitical rummaging, you know, contest between the bigger powers. But in terms of how we've related, you know, these are people we've worked with, you know, for a considerable amount of time now. I think the general attitude from the Pacific is, you know, do your stuff over there, but we'll just carry on and work with you as we've been doing, you know, for a long time now. I mean, there was one issue, and which has, I think, come up more recently with the forum on the dialogue partners and so forth, and you know, the different groupings who work with mainland China and those who work with Taiwan. Now, you know, the forum has adopted a way of work, right? So there's a dialogue meeting with the partners, including China, and to accommodate Taiwan and the situation between Taiwan and China, they have a different forum, but in the country where, you know, the PIF is hosted from year to year. So that has been the traditional treatment by the forum leaders. When we met in Tonga last year and the issue came up, the leaders decided, you know, that we'll just carry on with how we've dealt with that issue. Now this year, it's hosted by Solomons. It's now being proposed by the Solomon Islanders that the leaders concentrate on internal PIF matters and regional matters. And it is true that there is a review ongoing for partners. So, and given also, I think, the contested space, you know, it's not a bad idea, actually. You know, just to let the Pacific be, you know, at this time. Yeah. Although it might suit Solomon Islands, but, you know, but I think that proposal has been made. The Troika leaders have endorsed it. We're supportive of it, to defer the partnership meetings until next year. Nice. That's exactly what I was going to ask you about, whether you were in support of Manele's decision. I just have two more questions, Loa Fionga. Now this might be a little bit of a, I'm sure you've heard it before, but basically I wanted to ask you whether you've ever at all considering the fact that you're the first woman deputy prime minister, first prime minister woman of Samoa, do you think the head of state is another role that you could possibly break the glass ceiling on? Well, I'm not. That was not my intention. I mean, I'd have to say that I've been approached the last couple of election periods, whether I might consider that, and I've declined it. I became an MP because that's the space I want to work in. Oh, excellent. And just my final question for you. If you're returned for a second term, what kind of Samoa do you want to leave as part of your legacy for the next 5 years? I would like a Samoa where, you know, Samoans want to stay. Okay. Because, you know, we are really challenged. And I think, you know, this was the issue right from when we became independent. There was a question whether we're viable to be you know, a sovereign country, and that continues to be a question, and it's a challenge for small countries. So, you know, I think that's still my issue. You know, our ancestors said we want to be a sovereign country, and you know, if our people leave, and we know why people leave, you know, they you know, see opportunities, they see better social services, you know, especially around education and health, you know, better livelihoods, I suppose. So opportunities. So, you know, if it's opportunities that people leave, then, you know, I would like us to work on opening up those opportunities for Samoan people, so that they want to stay. That's the Samoa I would like. And, you know, I keep on reminding people that I don't think we value what we have as much as we can. I mean, if you just look at the issue of land, right? You go live overseas, you're either renting, you know, maybe if you're fortunate, you can buy your home, but property is you know, is a basic tenant, you know, for successful living. You know, here in Samoa, 80% of our land is customary. You know, you can put up your house, you don't have to pay taxes on it or rates. So just, you know, that very basic thing. So many people are homeless, they're landless, and yet, you know, we have that asset. So, you know, that's what I would like to see, and, you know, that's how SUP is. Since we came in, you know, and acknowledged as fast, the approach is we're a small country, government is small, we have limited resources. If we want to make that step, government's not enough. So government needs to, you know, make the investment in people, in organizations, in communities, so that we can all, you know, build and develop together. And that has been the approach since we came into government, and it's what we would like to continue to do.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Unless there's something else you'd like to add to our interview, that basically wraps up my questions.
Thank you very much.